Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, October 14th, Washougal City Council meeting. I'm going to take a little bit of privilege with the agenda. I notice that we have some young men in fatigues here this evening.
And lady.
Rachel, would you like to, or someone, introduce us to some folks?
My name is Young Marine Gunnery Sergeant Crimson Morgan. I'm from the Lewis and Clark Young Marines. I'm assisted by
I'm Young Marine Private First Class Wolf.
And I'm Young Marine PFC Barnhart.
Welcome.
Good to have you.
With that,
Coming.
don't sit down. Don't sit down. If you three would come front and center, would you mind leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Rose, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay. Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Council, are there any amendments to the agenda?
I'd like unanimous consent that we excuse Councilmember Lindsay.
Jennifer, have you heard from Joyce?
Yeah, she informed us a couple weeks ago that she would be absent tonight.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we do have a proclamation this evening for Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd to the 31st, 2013. Whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic proportions, and whereas the hope in winning the war on drugs lies in education and drug demand reduction, as shown by organizations such as the Lewis and Clark Young Marines of the Marine Corps League, to foster a healthy, drug-free lifestyle, and whereas government and community leaders are aware that citizen support is a most effective tool in the effort to reduce the use and abuse of drugs in our community, and whereas the Red Ribbon has been chosen to commemorate the work of Enrique Kiki Caminera, a special agent of the DEA who was killed in the line of duty and represents the belief that one person can make a difference, and whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by the U.S. Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle, involvement in drug prevention, and efforts to reduce drug use and abuse, and whereas October 23rd to the 31st has been designated as National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon during this week-long campaign to show their support for a drug-free environment. Now, therefore, I, Sean Gard, Mayor of the City of Washougal, Washington, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through the 31st as Red Ribbon Week and encourage citizens to join in making a visible statement of our commitment to a drug-free city. Would you folks like to come up and accept this proclamation? And if you don't mind, if you could let us know, give us a couple of minutes of what you're going to do during this week and things that we can do to help.
Yes, sir. On behalf of the Lewis and Clark Young Marines, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
With the proclamation, our unit is going to go with youth across Oregon and Washington to talk to them and counsel kids from 8 to 18, talk to them about the Young Marine program and what we do, and to talk to the youth and talk to the adults of the community, and for them to see who we are and what we do. The Young Marines definitely shows a healthy, drug-free lifestyle among all youth, parents, community, schools, and
You bet. So, have you guys, I know I received an email from former Police Chief Hillgartner. Do you run into Mr. Hillgartner at all? Is he part of your organization?
Yes, sir. He's one of our staff members.
If you would, definitely make sure and send him our best regards.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
In conjunction with Red Ribbon Week, and I challenge anybody to try and say that 3 times and keep going, Red Ribbon Week. October 19th, there is scheduled a Healthy Me Community Health Festival up at Jemtegard Middle School, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Rose, if we could, make sure and have these posters put up throughout the city buildings and the library. The poster indicates the band will be there. There's going to be food, entertainment, raffle prizes, scavenger hunts, kids obstacle courses, bounce houses, free massages, and interactive health booths and more. So a lot of things going on at Jemtegard from 11 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm assuming we can wear these outside of the week, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank all of you for your efforts. With that, we are at we'll give a minute to get through the crowd.
Got to work the crowd. All right.
Councilman Shoemaker, have you been involved with the Young Marines before?
No, I haven't.
They probably wouldn't be a bad addition to our Memorial Day ceremonies,
Good point.
if we have some of them about. Thank you again.
We should have patriotic music at that, too.
With that, we are at the first opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address the council. State Representative Pike. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. First of all, thanks for being city council people and a mayor in Washougal. I know that this job's not always easy, and you guys don't all agree, but you're home. I mean, you're away from your home tonight, from your families, and I know the sacrifices you make, so I just want to say thanks for being here. I wanted to give you just a little quick update on some legislation that I'm working on that could help the city. One of them is a new agency review bill, and it basically would require legislative review over any new agency rule or permit that the agencies, the non-elected bureaucrats, come up with. And I think that maybe will be able to help Washougal, because when folks like the people at Ecology and other agencies write rules with no way for us citizens to stop those rules. So there would be 3 triggers: a number of legislators, a number of voters, or a number of business organizations that are in Washington could basically petition and allow and ask the legislature to review the agency rules. So it's a small step. I know it's not perfect, but it's a way to sort of get our camel's nose under the tent on legislative review over rulemaking by agencies. So that's in bill draft form. And I know I talked with you, Mayor, about drafting a bill that would exempt cities of 3,000 or excuse me, 30,000 less population cities to be exempt from paying to contributing to pensions for seasonal workers. And I think I've talked to Mayor Higgins in Camas, and he is very appreciative, and I think that may be able to help Washougal too going forward. So those are just 2 of the 6 bills, and I'm working on the other 2 are things that are not quite related to city business. But the other thing I wanted to mention too is I'm so proud of Washougal, specifically your representative, Connie Jo Freeman, to the CTRAN board. And I'm sure all of you have been keeping watch of what's going on at the CTRAN board recently. And the fact that your citizens voted by a margin of 58% to reject a proposal to increase sales tax to operate light rail on the new proposed CRC crossing and also bus rapid transit. That, to me, that was a really black and white issue. It's the only time that anybody in Clark County has given citizens an opportunity to weigh in, and your citizens, by a margin of 58%, that's not even close. In political terms, that's a super landslide. And Camas by 55%. So you're representing your cities really well, in my opinion. So thank you for doing that and voting no on the terrible contract that was very hastily approved by the CTRAN board. And I can't say the same for your city's representation to the Regional Transportation Council, which I attended last week. And unfortunately, your representative from Camas didn't honor the will of the people that your representative did to the CTRAN board. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand what goes on at these CTRAN board meetings, because it's really critical. And good job, Connie Jo.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for your continued help as well in
Yes,
trying to get
thank
our little snafu between stormwater and sewer plant taken care of this next time around. I have one, Harvey. I'll give you one.
Well, that's all I need, Mayor. Trust me.
One time slot, 1 minute.
Harvey Olson, 3903 R Street. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Kind of you.
Good evening, Harvey.
Good evening. Last January, I expressed an opinion to the council and mayor that households using less than 10 units of water were partially subsidizing households using more than 10 units. On October 1st issue of the Post Record stated that the subsidizing of the 10 or more units by users of less was confirmed. Only took them 10 months. The article also said the projected cost for 9 units or less in 2014 will be 0.01215 cents per gallon compared with 0.01238 cents per gallon in 2013. A small savings of 0.00023 cents per gallon, but it's a start to reduce the high cost of our water. Why has it taken 10 months for the mayor to come up with the proposed plan? Per RCW 35A.12.100, the mayor is in charge of all departments, employees, and all city interests. Like President Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. All users of our water should thank Councilor Boger for making a motion in January 2013 to use $500,000 from the city's reserves to assist homeowners with their water bills. The mayor at the same meeting wanted to use the same $500,000 to be put in a property acquisition account, eventually to purchase 3 pieces of property on the southeast corner of Main Street and Washougal River Road. The council voted 6-1 in favor of Councilor Boger's motion and a large majority to defeat the mayor's proposal. Thank you.
You're welcome, Harvey. Other members that would like to speak with the council? Okay, not your last opportunity. We do have another opportunity before the end of the agenda itself. With that, we will move to our consent agenda. This evening there are 5 items on that. Our workshop minutes of September 23rd, 2013, our council minutes of September 23rd, our town hall minutes of September 28th, our regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $524,947.95, and a utility assistance program approval in the amount of $410.47. Council?
Mr. Mayor, would you pull item E for separate consideration, please?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, turn my mic on. Would you pull item D also?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Hearing no objection, items A, B, and C are adopted. Going to item D, our regular accounts payable claims. Councilmember McDaniel.
Yes, I'm interested in pulling a particular item out of the AP claims, and I just received notice that it was in the AP claims today, so, let's see, which one was it? It is Summit Law Group, 62806 for $4,444.50, of which $4,366.50 is being spent on the appeal of the arbitrator's decision in Officer Ritchie's case, and I would like to take a separate vote on that item.
So you want an explanation of the item, or you just want it pulled for a
Well,
separate
like
piece?
it pulled for a vote. I'm willing to approve the regular AP claims minus that one item.
Jennifer, can I have that? So is there a motion on the additional items?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the regular AP claims minus the payment to Summit Law Group, check number 62806.
Second?
Actually, it was a call for unanimous approval. If there are no objections, the rest of the accounts payable are approved. The one that's outstanding is an amount of $4,444.50 to the Summit Law Group. Jennifer?
Yes, would you like a motion to approve it before discussion, or would you like discussion now?
No, a motion would be in order before any discussion.
I move to approve check number, sorry?
62806.
62806.
Did you say to approve?
I've got a motion and a second to approve check 62806. Council discussion. Jennifer?
Yes. I will be voting against approval of this particular item because I do not believe that it's in the best interest of the city to spend further dollars on this particular case. The appeal of the city against an arbitrator's decision in this instance isn't a good expense of taxpayer funds, in my opinion, so I'll be voting against it.
Any other council discussion? Brent?
I'll be voting in favor of it. I think that a lot of what Councilmember McDaniel has said has some merit, but we have been proceeding down a path, and I think there needs to be a little more deliberation before we suddenly stop proceeding down that path. And I don't think an accounts payable is a place to do that. So I'll be voting to approve the expenditure.
David?
Could I ask my colleague to elucidate a little bit on this? I'm not clear what the objection is.
The objection is that there was an arbitrator's decision regarding this officer, and we as a city are appealing it and will be incurring additional legal fees to do so, and I don't agree with that. So I will be voting against any charges, legal or otherwise, regarding this issue.
And so, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And Mr. Mayor, the motion is
To approve the item.
to approve the item. So a no vote would be,
not approve
I'm
the
going
item.
to be voting no.
right, okay.
And this is to
Got it.
pay whom? Didn't track quite all the way. This is for,
This is for our Human Resource Legal Counsel in Seattle.
for the council.
Any other, Paul?
That's,
If we were to table this, what are the implications?
It appears it's already been paid, so
That's the way these work, yeah.
your questions are a little bit mute, but I understand that there's some
My understanding is that
philosophical things behind it.
there's, even though it's been paid, that there is recourse.
the finance committee, the way the policies are set up, if it's approved by the majority of the finance committee, then we send out payment. We could probably pull the check back if the council votes against it, but that's how the internal controls are set up, is for the finance committee to review the payables, and once approved by the majority of the committee, then we do pay those.
Yeah, it's my understanding that if there were not the possibility of a council override, that then the finance committee would be conducting public business in a way that would subject it to the Open Public Meetings Act.
I have no idea what you said, but you have the ability to act on behalf of the council to approve the items within state statute.
If we have that without recourse by the council, then we are conducting city business in a way that we would be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, is my understanding. That the ability of council to overrule the Finance Committee is crucial to staying in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Dave?
This vote is about overruling that, is it not?
It could be. I'm not sure how you
So-
unpay a bill that we paid 2, 3, 3.5 weeks ago. But
I'm trying to
I
understand.
guess we can ask Mr. Bolasina to send us back the money.
I'm trying to understand Councilman Greenlee's concern, because it appears to me that we do have the authority, and in fact, we are required to review the work of the Finance Committee, and therefore, it would seem to be a moot point.
And they were reviewed on the 23rd. I'm not sure who the other signature is that isn't on there. Mr. Greenlee doesn't have a date on his. So they were
Oh, am I-
reviewed and
am I
approved
wrong
on
in
the
that?
23rd.
Mayor,
Brent?
regardless of whether we're, want to change course on that litigation, these services have been performed by a law firm who received instructions from us. And I think I think more or less we're legally obligated to pay it. And so I do think there's some merit in discussing where we're going with the Ritchie case, but I don't know that that should be discussed publicly, because that's pending litigation. Although, if we decide to talk about it publicly, we can. I just don't know that paying this check is the place to do that.
Paul?
I agree that the services have been performed as directed and should be paid for. I would also, in deference to my colleague, like to have a discussion, executive session, or as necessary, on how we go forward in this matter.
Would you like to have that this evening?
I'm not sure that we're prepared for that discussion, are we?
I would be surprised if we're not prepared for the discussion. We have legal counsel here, so you can have one in regards to litigation. We know where we are in standpoint to the court system and other remedies as well. We have Chief Mitchell here as well.
Scott, are you up to speed on what's going on in this case?
I attended the hearing a couple of weeks ago, so.
Okay,
Yes.
fine.
Well, how time sensitive is it that we make a decision how to move forward right now? I mean, is this something we have to do tonight? 2 weeks from now?
It's a question for Scott. Is there anything pending, any work that's pending that they're doing on this case at this time?
No, we're just waiting for a judge's decision at this time.
Okay, so that's the answer.
And I still would suggest that the work has been performed and should be paid for.
Dave?
I think tonight would be the appropriate time to do the executive session, because if there are expenses going forward and you object to them, we have a chance to deal with them tonight. So understanding your objection, I think, I would like to honor that understanding with a review of the situation so that we can make a good decision.
Second.
Oh, sorry, motion on the floor. We'll just add an executive session to the end of the agenda. So we will certainly take care of that. Any other discussion on the item under consideration, the approval of the check to Summit Law Group?
Well, I just basically agree that it's services rendered at our instructions, that we are obligated to pay it until, further action we need to deal with tonight. I think that's a great idea.
Any other comments? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve check number 62806 in the amount of $4,444.50 to the Summit Law Group. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Motion carries. Okay, and item number E, the utility assistance approval, or program approval. Councilmember Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment on that one, that I will be voting against this tonight because it was initially funded from reserves, and I don't think that's an appropriate use of reserves. I'm a minority on the council in that regard. I will defer to my colleagues. Actually, rather than voting no, I will abstain to give them free rein.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the utility assistance program for $410.47.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the utility assistance program approval of $410.47. Council discussion? Kind-Joe?
I asked the records to be pulled so that I could be reminded how I voted on this, and I did vote no on this, and I will also withhold my approval. Can you explain to me why you would abstain over voting no?
Because I thought I was going to be outvoted 6-1.
Do you feel any better if it's...
And I,
six of
Come
us
on
would be
in, the
fine.
water's fine.
I wanted to give my colleagues the chance to exercise free rein without bothering about my concerns.
I will be voting no.
Any other council discussion?
In that case, I will join my colleague.
We haven't taken a vote yet.
Yep.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the utility assistance program approval of $410.47. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Motion carried. Okay, moving on to new business. We already, in our workshop previous to the council meeting, went over our department budget overviews in Public Works and general funds. Brings us to item number B, Finance, the 2014 budget preliminary revenue and expenditure estimates. Jennifer.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
This presentation was one that we presented to you a couple weeks ago, but didn't have time to actually go through and discuss. So we're going to take the time to go through that tonight to make sure we answer any questions that you have. But these are the 2014 preliminary revenue and expenditure estimates that we're currently working with and fine-tuning to get to the mayor's proposed budget that we'll present on the 28th of October. So tonight, right now, we'll discuss the budget approach, which we've already discussed as well, so it'll be a little bit more of a reminder, the preliminary estimates, and then the next steps. Just to again, remind you of the timeline. July through September is when we compile the estimates. We give you the preliminary estimates by October 1st. October 28th is going to be the preliminary budget and message from the mayor. We'll also do the third quarter update for 2013 at that time on the 28th. So for the general and street fund on the revenue side, we're remaining conservative.
When does the budget resolution have to be passed?
The ad valorem has to be by the end of November. And I'll have those reminders at the end of this presentation
Great,
as
thank
well.
you.
So we are remaining conservative with the revenue estimates for the general and street fund. And per direction from the council, we are using the one-time fund closeouts to balance the budget. Throughout these two presentations that I'm doing tonight, you will see a deficit number of roughly 230, 240. But when we do the presentation on the 28th, we will have that fund closure revenue to bring it balanced. I just wanted to make sure that you saw what the actual number was before the fund closure, so that we can have the discussion throughout the preliminary portions. On the expense side, as Mr. Scott mentioned earlier, we are essentially doing the same budget from 13. We're holding the line on the budgets and adjusting for the known fixed increases. All three contracts are up in negotiations, so we don't have that information to input into the budget. But the labor costs for other things such as healthcare and that sort of thing, we are including in the budget. We have received numbers from AWC on that, so we can put some hard fixed numbers in there for the presentation on the 28th. The CRESA numbers, I believe, were given to me today, so I will make sure that those are updated by the 28th as well. So the numbers that are currently in here are estimates, and then we'll be able to fine-tune that a little bit more by the 28th. Some of the key investments that we've talked about in the prior budget discussions as well, as we are continuing to operationally fund the ER&R, Equipment Repair and Replacement Funds, both the vehicles and the IT side. The building contingency funds, or building capital project fund, and the transportation capital projects funds. We are continuing to allocate some funds for the strategic planning initiatives that we're trying to move forward with as well. So the numbers that we had, property taxes with the revenues snuck in on me. As we've discussed, we were working with the assessor's office, and the numbers are looking pretty favorable for Washougal. We're assuming an 8.7% increase in assessed values and 1% new construction. Our estimates with our revenues do include using a 1% increase in the property tax side. I have recently gotten some, last week, some additional information from the assessor, so I need to compare that to what we're currently using to see. So the number might go up a little bit. I haven't compared it specifically yet, but by the 28th, that number should be pretty fixed. So the property tax number that we're budgeting preliminary on for the general property tax is $84,000 higher than the 13 budget, and the EMS levy is $36,000 higher, again with the 1% on both of those. We're being conservative with the sales tax number. We went up 3.5% versus the 2013. We did some research, and we could probably play with that a little bit more, but we wanted to stay conservative because we're tracking pretty well this year with how we increased that line item. So again, we wouldn't want to over budget. We want to keep it achievable. Utility taxes, we're using the preliminary rate study information that they brought forward a couple weeks ago with the 3% increase in water but 0 for sewer. And we've adjusted for the change in the hydrant costs. So we've adjusted for that as well. The state shared revenue, the estimates have decreased slightly. We are working through MRSC and getting the most updated information and fine-tuning that as we go. The development fees, we are conservatively estimating those as well. The building side is increasing quite well. And as our third quarter will show, we're doing very well on that side of the revenues for the general fund. But all in all, with the changes in the utility tax, even with the increase of the property tax because of the taking out of the hydrant costs with the decrease in the utility tax, there is a negative 1% overall decrease to the revenue on the general fund side compared to the 13 budget, which we'll walk through in the big presentation. So those aren't too bad up there, I guess. Here's the overall picture that we're estimating. Again, it's broken out by revenue source for the general fund. General property taxes are listed out comparing between actual 12 amounts. The 13 is the budgeted amount that we budgeted for last year, and then what we're requesting in 14 for property taxes, sales tax, utility tax, and so forth and so on. So as you can see, the bottom line is we budgeted 10.7 million roughly in 13, and it's roughly 10.6 in 14 in our preliminary estimates. On the expense side, as I mentioned, all labor contracts are being negotiated. There is a slight increase in the Kaiser Medical, but the AWC medical is at 0% for increase. Just as a side note, we will be bringing we haven't brought the interlocal forward yet, have we? So the interlocal will be coming forward for the AWC information, as Councilmember Greenlee brought up a few weeks ago, for the AWC side. So here it is broken out by department, the actual 2012 costs for each general fund department, what we budgeted in 13, and what we're estimating for 14. As you can see, finance went up, but again, that's due to the inclusion of the IT department. The salaries, training, and all those types of costs are all incorporated there. And then the rest remains pretty flat. With the general government side, the difference there with the decrease is that's where we account for the interfund transfers, so that $586,000 decrease, 500 of it is the expenditure of the reserves to go to lower the utility rates. But other than that, it's pretty status quo. It is 3% lower in 14 compared to 13. So putting all of our estimates into the spreadsheet that you see year after year with the forecasted deficit, you can see in 12 we ended the year roughly $95,000 in the positive. We budgeted to be $594,000 to the deficit side in 13. And then again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're currently at a deficit of $231,000 based on the preliminary information, and that's just because I haven't put that fund closure in as revenue yet, just to give you the perspective and to show you how that moves forward. So in the 28th presentation, it will have that in there, and it will be a balanced budget. So this slide will change slightly by the $240,000. But as you can see with our inflators, we worked with Paul Lewis to get some of the growth forecasts for revenues and expenditures. So those are just on a high level carry forward basis using those forecasting averages. That's what the projected deficits are for 15, 16, 17, and 18, ranging from $800,000 in 15 to $1.4 million in 18. On the utility side, as Karen, was Karen here? As she's mentioned, we have the increase of 3% in water for 14 with no sewer increase in January. The stormwater rate will increase 14.5% per the rates study that was conducted in 10 for implementation in 11. We're holding the line on the O&M and then following the capital facility plan per the new study from Karen. We've pushed some of the projects out, but we are working forward on the bond fund, and we will talk about those in the next presentation on where we're at with some of those. So here's the estimates for the utility funds, the 2012 actuals with the 13 budget, and then the 14 preliminary budget with the changes between the years. And then we have the other funds in here. I didn't do a lot of detail on these because they're pretty self-explanatory, and we will talk about them. But the EMS restricted fund, that's the, if you'll remember, the fund from the 10-cent levy that we had, EMS levy lid lift. We had the surplus funds that we put into that, and we can only use them for EMS-related expenses. So they've been contributing to the 10 cents that we continue to send to Camas, even though we don't collect the 10 cents on the tax side. So that's been able to assist in those payments. And as you can see, we're budgeting to bring that balance to a zero at the end of 14. So that fund will close at the end of 14. Fire impact fee funds are not currently being budgeted. We're saving those for future capital purchases on the fire side. We used the bulk of the funds in the past to buy the new fire truck. So we're rebuilding that surplus for a future fire purchase, I'm sure. The cemetery services fund, we talked about those in the earlier presentations. The perpetual care fund, the REIT 1 and 2, Fund 104 and 106 are the REITs. So I've put in what we've budgeted for those. The first quarter REIT includes the $150,000 for the, I think it's the first quarter, for the streets, but then the rest are just debt payments for the downtown bonds. Park impact fees are in there as well. And I do have more information on these in the next presentation. So if you have any specific questions on any of these individual funds, otherwise we will talk about them again in a minute. Debt funds, ER&R funds, we're following the plans from Paul Lewis. Theo, the IT manager, has put together an IT. He's starting to put together the IT capital facility plan to actually have a replacement schedule for computers and servers and all those types of things. So we're starting to put together a better plan for that as well. But we're still in the catch-up mode for the most part in the IT replacement side. So the next steps, we're going to have additional review and revision, input from the labor negotiations that are ongoing. As I mentioned, the end of last week, I did get updated information from the assessor, but I haven't compared it yet. So I will have an update on that next meeting. And then we'll analyze the third quarter financial report to see how we're doing in 13 to compare to 14. I think I've said this about 7 times already, but the 28th we'll present the big detailed information of the budget. It will be available for the public. We'll have copies. We'll have maybe we won't go with the binders, but we'll have hard copy binders, or it'll be tagged in your Dropbox for you, but ahead of time. And then we need to set the public hearings for November 12th for the budget and the ad valorem tax levies. We'll do that under consent on the 28th. November 4th, we'll have a workshop where we can discuss the ad valorem tax and the budget. November 9th is the town hall regarding the budget. And then November 12th at the council meeting, we'll hold the public hearings, potentially approve the ad valorem tax. The deadline again is November 30th, and potentially approve the budget. Should the budget not be passed that night, then we have November 18th, December 2nd, December 9th, and the 16th. For the budget, because that just has to be approved by the end of the year. Again, the ad valorem has to be approved before November 30th, so if it doesn't work on some of the prior dates, we could hold a special meeting on the 25th. And that brings us to questions.
Curiosity, what are the state shared revenues?
The liquor excise tax, liquor profit, there's a city assistance that they brought forward after the car tax went away. There still is the motor vehicle excise tax. There's criminal ones as well. Are the ones that come to mind.
Are most of those funds restricted in their use?
The motor vehicle goes to the street fund, yes. But the liquor excise, those aren't restricted. The criminal justice ones support the criminal justice expenditures in the budget. And the city assistance is general as well.
At one point there was sales tax equalization. Has that gone away?
I believe so. It's not a line item that we get. I think other cities still receive it, but we don't.
And then my memory eludes me. We had a 10-cent EMS levy, which expired
At the end of 12.
at the end of 12.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a levy that we had, and we let it expire, and we couldn't put it back in place because of the millage cap.
No, you could have put it back in place, but there was no room under the cap.
That's what I mean.
And there was room to put something back and have it on the ballot this November. The council chose earlier this year to defer.
Right.
We had been thinking that we had no room, but then we got early and good news from the assessor. And based on that, we did have a workshop and a conversation. The council decided to defer on bringing that back to the voters and directed us to bring that back to the council's attention during the first quarter of 2014 for a possible ballot measure in 2014 to replace the lid lift.
Thank you for refreshing my memory. That's all. Thank you.
Other questions for Jennifer on the 2014 proposed start of the budget? Okay, let's go into some highlights.
So I apologize, there are some duplicate slides, so I'm kind of going to breeze over them. I know I've said October 28th. Pretend this is two different meetings. So now we're going to talk about the 2014 budget highlights. We'll talk about the general fund, operation and maintenance highlights, the utility highlights, and then we're going to get into more detail on the other funds, such as REIT, PIF, TIF, park impact fees, and transportation impact fees, and the debt funds and the capital fund. So just to reiterate, with the administration side of the general fund, there's no change in the overall budget. And within the overall budget for administration, we're going to continue the strategic planning implementation. And then we've also included legislative advocacy to focus on infrastructure, as Dave mentioned during his presentation a few weeks ago. With the police department, the chief is planning to do a staff restructure. It is within the existing budget. He's restructured some of his expenditure line items in the police department to be able to accommodate this within the current appropriation and within the current FTE count. Currently, we have 2 corporals and 2 sergeants, and the plan is to switch the corporals to sergeants to have 4, and that will allow better flow of the duties across the board. Right now, there's things that the corporals can't do that the sergeants can do. So having 4 sergeants to allocate the flow through will be a better use of resources for efficiency and productivity within the police department. Again, it's within the existing budget, and it's not adding any FTE. Similarly, in finance, as you'll recall, we've restructured the department quite a few times in the past couple of years to find the right mix. We've pulled the middle management out of the finance department, which has been a little trying with being able to answer all the daily questions, focus on some of the higher level stuff. So in working through a better flow, we currently have 2 accountants. So what we're planning on doing is making an accountant lead and then an accountant. And essentially what that means is there's one more step for the accountant lead. And we've incorporated that. I've decreased some of the other expenses within the department to make that work. So we're not adding any FTE, and it's within the existing budget as well. The Parks Department has some excitement next year. It's part of the Army Corps of Engineers mandate on the levee. We need to remove some root balls, I believe, in the trees along the levee, so we'll be working with the Corps. We're estimating it at $30,000. We don't have a hard cost yet, but that's a pretty significant amount for the Parks budget, so we wanted to make sure that we pointed that out, that is an estimate, and hopefully it won't be more than that. But we're pretty confident that it'll come within that amount. Again, on the water and sewer operations and maintenance, we're continuing to maintain the systems. There's no new initiatives there on the O&M side. Stormwater, we're also continuing to maintain the systems. However, in the rate study that FCS put together for us during 2010 for implementation, that does add 1 FTE in 14 to address increasing mandates and support of that system. So we've added that to the budget as well. brings us to the other funds. The REIT, or Real Estate Excise Tax Funds, that's Fund 104 and 106. We're continuing to cover the downtown bond payment, $379,000 is due in 14. And then, as in the past, we've included $150,000 for pavement management. The TIF fund, Transportation Impact Fee Fund, we were saving in this account for the grant match for the 32nd Evergreen project. In our application for that grant, we committed $151,000 of TIF revenue to be spent at a later date. I'm happy to report that we've collected that and more to date in 13. So our fund balance at this point gives us an additional $172,000 that could be potential match for additional grant opportunities next year. I anticipate that number will be higher because that is just through 10/10 of 13 when I put the presentation together. So I'll be meeting with Trevor and Rob and see if there's some other grants that we can apply for to utilize some street improvements or other potential projects. And so that's a very positive note from the city. Along the lines of the transportation impact fees, we have the Transportation Capital Project Fund. We're going to continue the annual operational transfer of $30,000. And then we're going to apply for 2014 CDBG grants. The full project amount for CDBG is typically $300,000, and then there's the city's match, which is the $138,000. So the rest will be received reimbursement for the remainder of the project. So the city's expense will only be $138,000. Similarly, the Safe Routes to School project, it'll be budgeted at $600,000, but it is 100% reimbursement basis, so we will receive the full $600,000 back on that grant. The FERC Impact Fee Fund, we've got potential acquisition of property and development of property at a little over $1 million, and then some grants that Suzanne is looking to apply for the grant match for Heartwood or the Eldridge Park in the amount of $50,000. The lodging tax, hotel motel tax fund, we're going to continue our firework event. I upped the dollar amount a little bit. I don't know for sure that they're going to raise the price, but just in case they do. And then we want to support other additional local events in the amount of $5,000. We're, as we've discussed, we're going to get a tourism website up and running this year, so we're going to continue support of that website through 14. The contract with the consultant for facilitation and support of the tourism promotion of Washougal, and then advertising in various travel magazines. It's called the Columbia River Gorge, the Vancouver one. So we are going to allocate some money for advertising as well. I wrote it out so I wouldn't forget what it stood for. The Public Educational Government Access Channel Fees Fund, or the PEG Fund as we call them. We're going to appropriate $5,000 for airing council meetings on television, in the hours of the morning, I'm sure. And then the remainder of the fees collected will be for the equipment replacement plan for the equipment in here to be able to have TV-ready meetings. As I mentioned in the last presentation, the Fire Impact Fee Fund currently has a balance of $115,000, and we're just saving for future capital purchases, so we won't be recommending any appropriations out of that fund for 14. The Building Capital Project Fund, again, the annual operational transfer of $30,000. We need to do some civic center replacement of the facade for both City Hall and the library and senior center. And then the roof and the HVAC system desperately needs repair at the senior center, so we'll be doing that project as well. On the utility capital funds, so water, sewer, ER&R program, we're going to purchase the vehicles per the schedule. The bond fund, again, we're going to continue the project for the revised capital plan with the bond funds to make sure that we have them appropriated or spent by the middle of next year. So we'll be working with our bond council on that as well. We have public work trust fund loans. We have a couple projects in progress. The well field disinfection is, $243,000 is what we're approved for the loan. And we're at $204,000 remaining, so we haven't spent very much off that loan. Pump stations 2 and 3, we had a pretty big size loan from the trust fund account, and I believe that project's done for 2 and 3.
It's been closed out, yes.
So we, as you can see, there's $343,000 remaining in that, and we didn't need to spend it, so that's positive. We didn't have to take out as much debt for that. And that brings us to debt funds. For the general fund debt, we have the police station bonds, which are paid for by the taxpayers. That was a taxpayer approved bond. The payment in 14 is $204,000. There's a little bit over $1 million outstanding as of the end of this year, and it'll be paid in full in 2022. The downtown bonds, which are paid with REIT, as I mentioned earlier, the payment for 14 is $379,000. We have $3.7 million outstanding as of the end of the year, and it'll be paid in full in 2026.
Jennifer, on the police bonds, is that not a level, that's not a level payment then each year?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But they're collected by the taxpayers, and we pay that out. And those are the ones that we just refinanced as well for the low rate. We have a couple different funding sources for the utility side. The Bank of America note, I believe, was what was remaining when we refinanced the 05 bond issuance, but it's almost paid in full. The payment for 14 is $99,000. There's 141 outstanding as of the end of this year, and then it'll be paid in full in March of 15. The 05 bond issue, the payment on that one is $584,000. There's $3.1 million outstanding, and it'll be paid in full in 2020. I think that was the sewer treatment plant upgrade. And then the recent 2011 bond issuance, the payment in 14 is $915,000. There's $15.8 million outstanding as of the end of this year of 13, and it'll be paid in full in 2031. We also have payments on public works trust fund loans. These are the completed projects. The 05 wastewater treatment plant improvement loan, the payment listed is $46,000. We have in 14, there's $524,000 outstanding as of the end of this year, and it will be paid in full in 2025. Loan 06, the pump station number 4, the payment's $105, and at 14, there's $1.2 million outstanding, and it will be paid in full in 2026. Loan 08 for the treatment plant and the administration building, $111,000 and 14, $1.5 million outstanding as of the end of this year, and it'll be paid in full in 2028. The 2 newest projects, since they're technically not completely closed out yet, we haven't gotten the amortization schedule. They don't give you that until you've closed out the loan to know what the amount is to amortize. But I'm estimating $5,000 to $10,000 on the 12 loan for pump station 2 and 3 for 14. Based on the paperwork of the loan, it's supposed to be paid in full in 2032. And as of 8/6 of 13, $563,000 was outstanding. Another current project for the well field. I don't know what the payment's going to be in 14 because we haven't made a payment. It's pretty new. There's $40,000 outstanding as of the end of August, or beginning of August, and it's supposed to be paid in full by 2031 based on the paperwork on that we signed. The ER&R funds, the vehicles, we're going to continue in the general fund to follow the replacement schedule. So that will be listed out in that fund of the budget package that you get on the 28th. On the IT side, we've identified a $40,000 operational transfer for equipment purchases as we're continuing to upgrade licenses, servers, and equipment. So that'll move us closer to our target. Next steps, we've gone over, I think, pretty well. If you don't have any questions on that, I'll.
Where's the thing on the 28th?
The next one.
Oh.
Oh, there it is.
You had to ask.
So one thing you're going to remember tonight is 28th. It's going to be a riveting evening. Very exciting stuff.
Life-changing.
And then all these reminders, and then questions.
Brent?
No,
Paul?
Go ahead with Dave. I have to leaf through and get organized.
Two quick questions. Do you have a list of all the transfers that'll be made out of reserves for this budget?
For the 14 budget,
Yes.
we're not using any reserves. We're transferring, we're closing out the funds.
Okay.
The garbage fund of roughly 40,000, and then the capital project fund to balance the budget.
Okay, and then the other thing is, what is the status of our reserves right now, general fund reserves? And I should have called you earlier to tell you I was going to ask that. If you want to give that to us next time, that's fine.
It would be on the other presentation on that deficit side, the off-the-cuff answer would be the so 12 is based on actual, so our ending cash was 3.3 million, it looks like, at the end of 12. But where we're falling so far for 13, I haven't factored that in yet.
Okay, and then how much of that would be for the maintenance of good practices reserves? 16%.
1.649.
So that leaves us around
1.651.
Okay, thank you.
My question is quick. Jen, the capital project fund that you're talking about, transferring the reserves, that was from the East Street project, correct?
Correct.
And it was what, is it almost 200,000 or?
Correct. Between the garbage fund of 40, I think it's about 200,000.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all.
Just a couple of comments. The port will be a great partner on this Corps of Engineers dike problem. They recently completed a major dike project along these lines. And if I remember correctly, when they first started talking about it, their fear was $2.5 million. And if I remember correctly, they came in right around 600,000 by the time all was said and done. So they did a great job, and their contractor did a great job. And I wouldn't hesitate to want to even use some of their staff to do some of the work if we wanted to do that under an ILA. That's a great group of people over there. They really know what they're doing on this particular issue. And just for the public, Public Works Trust Fund, which we call PWTF upon occasion. This is a fund which was created many years ago by the legislature. It's a revolving credit account that helps municipalities build infrastructure, water, sewer, and roads, basically. The interest rate on most of these loans is 0.75%, which is very low. And not only that, but they have been very flexible on their payment arrangements. So they may give you a loan of $1 million and you can repay 500,000 of that in the first year and not foul things up. If you have a bond through Bank of America or one of the other market sources, they have very tight contracts on those payments. You cannot pay them early, even if you don't need the money. So the Public Works Trust Fund is a terrific tool for a municipality. Unfortunately, the legislature, in its wisdom this year, swept the Public Works Trust Fund into the state's general fund for the next 6 years. So all of the payments that we make on these loans, which would ordinarily be available for additional loans to other cities or even to us, now disappear into the general fund of the state. You can tell I'm not happy about that. And then the other thing, I was just curious about What are the software upgrades that were being talked about? Are we going to an actually currently supported version of Exchange Server?
Yes, we're updating our licenses with Exchange, and we were on various different versions of Office throughout the city, so we are upgrading all of those. Theo's doing wonderful things. He's having this, everything being imaged, so it's the same. You can log into any computer. We're working with SunGuard on upgrading that system as well to get it just up to current IT standards. So we've replaced a couple servers so far, and we're phasing out some of the older computers to be able to have faster capabilities as well.
My email and calendar clients will thank you for the new versions of Exchange. Thank you, that's all.
Other questions? David?
Do you have one?
I do. You may go first.
I'll defer to my colleague because she hasn't been up yet.
Connie Jo?
Okay. Such a polite this table. It's not a large fund. It's $5,000 for airing council meetings on television. I don't remember when we passed that as a council, but I have a question too. Thank you. I have a question about why we passed it. I'm thinking with Theo here now, back before Theo, it would take us a week or 2 weeks to get it up on YouTube, but now he gets it up that very night.
This is to actually air them on cable channels. The PEG fees are actually from the cable subscribers, and in order to collect those PEG fees, we have to air it on cable channels. So that's not a cost for uploading to YouTube. It's a cost to have it on the cable channels through Fort Vancouver, FVTV.
Is YouTube free?
It is, but the equipment in this room to produce the meetings for YouTube is not free. So in order to have quality videos to air on cable TV, we assess the PEG fees.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned that you were closing out the E Street project, the surplus that was remaining in that. Did I understand you're transferring that to the general fund?
Correct. We'll be transferring that to shore up the projected deficit in 2014.
Okay, and so my question is that not using borrowed money from the East Street project on which we're paying interest to fund current operations?
Well, we use general fund money for East Street as well, and so it's truly general funds that were spent and then reimbursed by TIB in the grant process.
So this is not borrowed money on which we're paying interest?
No, it was part of the
Money left over from...
money left over. We trued it up at the end with the change orders, and TIB was very gracious in allowing some of the things that weren't originally in the scope that the general fund paid for to be reimbursable.
I don't know who did that, but it was great. Thank you.
TIB is?
Transportation Improvement Board.
Thank
That would be
you.
Trevor's staff.
Yes.
TIB. Other questions for Jennifer? Okay, more to follow on the 28th.
When?
Thank you. David, form of government transition.
May we ask questions now?
Not yet. Getting close.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the Council's request, I've prepared a brief presentation on trans issues that the community would face, the Council and the staff would face if Proposition 1 passes next month in the general election. And so this presentation, for the moment, assumes that that Proposition 1 passes, and if it does, this is a brief presentation on transition issues. So we will talk about the effective date of the transition and the governing statute that's involved. We'll talk about the council and the mayor and what the implications are with respect to a transition. We'll talk about the new office of city manager that is contemplated in that form of government. And we will talk about the community's representation on various boards and committees, issues related to our code and to policy, and other administrative items that would be at work in a transition as well as communications in the wake of a transition. The new form of government, the council manager form of government, is governed by RCW 35A13, and I'm not going to go into this statute. That's just for your reference. That is the statute that governs the new form if the proposition passes. And 35A6 in the RCW talks about how it happens and what the process is. I should have prefaced my comments as well to say that I've had quite a lot of conversation with MRSC on this possible transition, both when we were preparing to put the initiative or the resolution in front of the council for your consideration of passing it and preparing the ballot proposition, and then in preparation for this presentation. And so pursuant to those governing statutes, the change in form would become immediately effective upon certification of the election results. And the election results are to be certified this year by the auditor on November 26th, which is the last Tuesday of the month. So, assuming that it passes on November 26th, we would immediately change to the new form of government. So the transition happens relatively quickly. The election is on the 5th, and 3 weeks later, the results are certified and the transition would be effective. So what does that mean? Starting with our elected officials, the statute is actually very clear on all of this. Our current mayor in the new form would become an 8th council member for the remainder of the current mayoral term. So that is through the end of the year. That's a relatively new creature in the statute. I can't remember exactly the year, but that is relatively new. And again, there's the...
2002.
Excuse me?
2002.
2002. And those are the statutory sites, again, that I'm referencing there. As you know, because there would no longer be a separately elected mayor and we would have changed form from mayor-council, the results of the mayoral race would be moot. Again, that's pursuant to those statutory constructs. The council would need to appoint a mayor from its ranks and a mayor pro tem for the remainder of 2013 until you could make appointments in the beginning of 2014. This could be done at a special meeting that could be held on Tuesday, November 26th. That would be your earliest opportunity to do that. MRSC thinks that that would be a good idea if the proposition passes, that there would be convened, excuse me, a special meeting on the 26th. It could wait until your next regular meeting, which is the first Monday in December, on December 2nd, but they would advise a special meeting. Moving forward, you would continue to make mayoral and mayor pro tem appointments from your membership for 2 years, and you do that at your first regular meeting in 2014, and that would become the new routine. I put this next bullet in. There's really no change, but just in case anyone had a question about this, current council members retain seats for the remainder of their term. Newly elected council members, of course, would assume their seats in 2014 upon oath. And again, that's no change. The Salary Commission, with respect to the salaries of elected officials, would need potentially to make some changes. That was mentioned at our town hall by the representative from the Salary Commission. They're aware of that, and the focus, I think, would be on the new mayoral role. So, yes.
So you're saying that council appoints mayor and mayor pro tem for 2 years. It's only a 2-year term each time.
That's the way the
Is that just the first time?
Well, I think what would happen is you would make the appointment, in talking with MRSC, you would make an appointment in November.
Right.
So that you could carry out for the end of the year. And it'd sort of be a temporary thing. And then early in January, you would jump into the routine that other code cities who are council manager are in, and that is that they make appointments from their ranks for these 2 positions for 2-year cycles. Unless you choose to do otherwise, or if we did a charter, or there's some different things, but the code application makes that appointment for 2 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the elected officials, and that's what would happen under the RCW 35A. There's a new office of city manager. Of course, this is the council manager form of government. So the first step that the council would have is pursuant to RCW 35A 13150, and it prescribes that the council would designate a qualified administrative officer to perform the duties of manager. It doesn't use the terminology interim manager, but I think that's what you could call it. And that would be pending the selection of a permanent manager. MRSC recommends doing that as well on a special meeting on November 26th, or you could wait until the regular meeting on December 2nd. If you wait on any of these items, there's a period of time between the 26th and December 2nd where there's really no formally appointed chief executive because the transition is immediate on the 26th. So they strongly recommend that you meet in special meeting on the 26th. That is an interim appointment if you would. And then, of course, the council needs to appoint a city manager, and that would be at your discretion in terms of timing. There's an oath and bonding, and those are the statutes for reference with respect to that. This next item is not necessarily a statutory requirement. However, as you know, in RCW 35A 13120, it talks about the manager's role and the council's role, and I think the title of that subparagraph is council interference, and it talks about the autonomy of a city manager and the ability of a council to make inquiries into the staff. I think best practice that I've observed is that there are some policies that would be developed that would deal with manager and staff accountability roles and responsibilities and communications, and there are a lot of examples of those types of policies that are out there so that there's no questions about how that works. That's something I think that would be important to develop over the latter part of 13 and moving into 14. This is something I'm also aware of that communities have done when they're transitioning, and even when they're already a council manager form, when they have a transition in managers because the manager is moving on for whatever reason, that there's an appointment of an administrative committee. It's not necessarily a standing committee, but it'd be a committee of the council that you would appoint, and you would charge that council with basically immediately beginning to work on this issue, and MRSC indicates it's completely appropriate for the council to make that appointment at your first opportunity after the election. If the results are clear enough on the 5th, on the 12th, you could appoint such a committee and charge that committee with beginning to work on these transition issues so that on the 26th there could be some recommendations. And it would be wholly appropriate for you to do that. You don't have to wait until the 26th for a committee to do that.
Dave, what if the election's really, really close and it's into recount territory?
Well, if everything...
That would, and it may not get certified on the 20th.
It would be certified.
Well, I guess it would. I guess after a recount, it would get certified anyway.
I believe the auditor strives to be able to certify the results on the 26th, so you'll know by the 26th. I didn't ask, and we did not chat about, with the MRC representative, about a automatic recount, if you would, on the results of the proposition, and whether or not that would preclude you from doing this committee. I don't think it precludes you from doing it. The comment that he made to me was, if the results are really clear, I think it's really clear the council could begin to engage, even though the council manager form of government is not in place. That you could begin to engage on some of the topics and the issues. And the recommendation to do it in a committee is just like all of your other committee work. It affords you that opportunity to informally engage on those issues. It's not a public meeting per se. As you know, we are represented on various boards and committees by our mayor, by council members, in some cases by staff. We would just want to look through all of that and and make a disposition of anything where there's currently mayoral representation. As you can imagine, there'd be a number of issues at play in our code and in our policies that you've set by resolution or otherwise. The current Washougal Municipal Code appropriately acknowledges our current form. And so it talks about various situations and officers and different things that are under the code, the statutory provisions of a code city that is mayor-council. We would need to make changes to those. There's a short list of what those are, and it's very straightforward to deal with it. And I believe that we could potentially have the most significant of those ready for action at a special meeting on November 26th, just to make that tidy. If not, maybe on December 2nd. If there were any others that needed to be done that we didn't have ready in time for that, that would happen in the first quarter of 2014. Your rules of procedure would need to be amended a little bit. Same comments there, not significant amendments, but nonetheless they are predicated on our current form and they would need to be adapted to a different form.
Dave, suggestion, if it comes to that, suggestion on that, don't do what Battleground did on those.
Okay. And then there may be other policies and resolutions that are out there that were contemplated, of course, in the context of our current form of government. We would just want to be evaluating those. I have not listed those out. I haven't begun a research project to look at what those all are, but I can think of a couple that would be out there where we would need to just update them to reflect a new form. Administrative chores that could be necessary for us to do. We have relationships with financial institutions. We have signature authorities. We just have to look at different things there. These are minor chores. There's internal administrative procedures we would just need to be adopting and adapting. No timeline necessarily on those. And then finally, I think it would be important to communicate about this. And in looking at what some other communities have done and what we do, press releases, our website, we have an email list. Some other communities have directed communication at various parties, state agencies, other government partners, and then of course working internally with the staff to make sure that everyone was clear on what happened on November 26th. We just want to be communicating well. I just wanted to point out before we go into any questions that you might have or comments, there is no specific checklist or roadmap for doing this other than those very precise things that are in the statute, and you can discern from them pretty quickly what you would have to do. However, there have been other communities that have gone through this, and so there are some documents that they put together just guiding themselves as they went through the transition, and we can certainly be informed, and I was informed by those in preparing this. I've chatted with colleagues and they tell me that multiple years, not many years, but a few years after a change, they still find something here and there that nobody had thought about, and so they just make the necessary adjustments when they have to. So that is sort of the best look at what a transition plan would have to look like. Needs to move pretty quickly. It's effective on November 26th if the proposition passes.
Questions for Dave? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You indicated that between the 26th of November and the 2nd of December, if we don't meet on the 26th of November, that there would be no leadership. Is that not the role of the Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, the new form of government would be immediately effective on November 26th. So the role of the Mayor Pro Tem that currently exists in the mayor-council form of government would cease to exist in its current form, and it would be the Mayor Pro Tem role that is operative in a council-manager form of government. And so it has no executive responsibility, and except in a declaration of an emergency. It's the only time under council-manager where the mayor has executive function. So there would be a void of formal and precise executive leadership for 6 days. Now, there's a city administrator in place. There's the current mayor. The city is going to function, and we'll be fine. However, the formality of that transition and appointment of the executive function will not have occurred, and so MRSC suggests that it be done on the 26th.
Okay, and what I was going to suggest was if the mayor pro tem was going to have to step in on the 26th, this would be a wonderful incentive to have the meeting on the 26th. I say that as the mayor pro tem.
Right. Understood. I think that MRSC, makes a good suggestion that there be a special meeting. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long meeting. It could just be for the purpose of a couple minor things that were in the earlier slides.
Other questions? Joe?
Thank you. If this was to happen, our normal meeting would be the Monday before that, the day before. Could we just change our meeting from that Monday to the Tuesday?
There isn't a fourth Monday meeting in November. In November and December, the council meets first, second, and third Mondays, pursuant to your rules that you adopted earlier, right? So a meeting on the fourth Tuesday, which is the 26th, would be a special meeting. And you really couldn't take any of those actions on the 25th, even if it was your regular meeting, because the change is not effective until the 26th. You could chat about some of these items at your regular meetings or workshops between the election and a special meeting on the 26th without taking any action. It could be executive sessions. There's some different things that could happen, and I think it would be a good idea to appoint an administrative committee of the council that you would charge with undertaking all of this in the immediate wake of the election in advance of a special meeting.
What are the specialties on that committee, number-wise?
It's preferable, if you're going to use a committee process, that it be 3 or less. Otherwise, it's the council.
Has to be 3 or less.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions, Brent?
There's nothing here that really surprises me, because I've been through a transition of form of government the other way, from council manager to mayor-council form, and it was a charter city, and they could do it over a 3-year period, I think, as I recall. We did not have that option under state law to do that. It has to be immediate, basically.
It's immediately effective.
Right, so there's no way to avoid this, to do a transition over a period of time.
There's no way to avoid it.
Okay.
That must occur.
The other question is, Dave, you and I have had some conversations. Even though I support the council manager form and wish you were going to that, I also am interested in an option where we can directly elect the mayor. We can't do that in conjunction with, we couldn't have done that in conjunction with this, could we? We had some discussions about that as well.
Correct. That's a decision of the voters. The council could, assuming, again, of course, all this is prefaced on the notion that the proposition passes next month, the council could consider and pass a resolution subsequent to that would place before the voters another proposition, and that proposition would ask the voters if they wanted to directly elect a mayor in the council manager form of government. That then, if it passes, then there's an implementation scheme for that happening. MRSC has not given us a final opinion as to exactly how that would happen, depending upon some different circumstances that have been described, but it could be that that transition would take some time and wouldn't be effective until the next time that seat number 1, which is identified as the seat that would become the elected mayor, is up for general election the next time, which in this case wouldn't be until 2018.
So, yeah, well,
17,
yeah.
excuse me. Missed my math
Well,
there.
this is jumping, if this does pass, and we can have this discussion in November, I would probably ask that you prepare a resolution to put such a measure on the ballot as a package, because some of the things that have been said during this campaign, I think, are such that I feel I'd like an opportunity to vote for that as soon as possible.
Other questions? Okay, thanks, Dave. That brings us to the second opportunity for public comments. So, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Eric Williams, 4253 on Drive. I've attended a few of these meetings this year, and I keep hearing a recurring theme as I've attended these. It's always seemed to be need more revenue, yada, yada, yada. And when I look at your budget here and see that we're going to be going into deficit spending and projected deficit spending, I keep hearing more of this revenue, but I don't hear any focus on expenditure reduction or looking to see if we're, on that side of the fence. And when I see something as ridiculous as, a $5,000 expense to air the city council meeting on a local cable vision at some God knows what hour that no one else would ever watch unless you DVR'd it, sends up red flags to me. Is what other kind of fluff is in these budgets? So, that's my statement here. Pretty much rhetorical, but that's what it looks here.
You ask a good question, Eric. Thank you. We actually, in 2010, we undertook a very lengthy and very in-depth look at expenses in the general fund side. And by the time 2012 was done, or excuse me, 2010, we were actually projected to use $1.5 million of revenue reserves in 2010 to balance the budget. As a part of that process of clearing the fluff out of the budget, we not only didn't use that $1.5 million, we actually added another $200,000 plus to the reserves. So the expenditure side has already, it started clear back in 2010. I think Jennifer mentioned, our finance director, that even in this year we have saved 3% in the budget in expenditures over what we had projected as well. On our utility side, in the last 2 years, we're averaging about 6% reduction in expenses on that side as well. So your point's taken. We should probably ballyhoo that a little bit more than we do, but that's something that the staff is always looking at ways in order to reduce. The reality is that a major portion of what we do is all by collective bargaining and is within some of our union ranks that, unfortunately, other than the actual approval of the union contracts, the council and the city really have nothing to do other than to follow what those agreements have in them. So we continue to work that as well, though, with our employees.
So you're saying you're beholden to the union contracts, like so many cities in the country?
Mm-hmm. Certainly in terms of what are in those contracts, absolutely. Once they're agreed to and signed.
Like Stockton and a few others? I mean, is that the path we're taking?
It's certainly not the path we're taking. Harvey.
Yes, sir. Harvey Olson, 3903 R Street. I wish to thank Dave Scott for his presentation of what would happen and what will happen when Prop 1 passes in a logical, legal, and a very informative way. It reminds me of an old TV show, This is the Facts Man. And that's exactly what you did, sir. Appreciate it very much. I've been very involved in Prop 1, and super job. Very good. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public that would like to address council? Marilyn.
I'm Marilyn, excuse me, I'm Marilyn Tyrrell, 950 G Street. There's a couple of quality of life issues that I would like to bring to your attention. There was some talk, Jennifer and other people were remarking about the beaches, clearing the weeds, et cetera, et cetera. The city of Vancouver and I think the county in the next week or two, are having a gathering where all sorts of volunteers are coming to clean up the parks. I'm not going to drive from Washougal up to 78th Street just to have a meeting so I can come back down to Washougal. And I am not going to arrange this, organize this, but I really would like to see us do the same thing for ourselves, maybe with our Camas partners. So I don't know who to approach about this, but it would be nice if we went out and did that. Scout and I do that when we're walking, but we don't walk the whole city of Washougal too often.
Marilyn, how did we miss you in September?
Did you do that in September?
We had a day in service that we had hundreds of people out cleaning.
See, there's where your $5,000 is going, and I didn't get there, so. Okay, my other thing was, back to trees. I'm sorry about my voice, but I've been sick for a while. Anyway, just over 200 years ago, Lewis and Clark spent time on the land which would become our city. At that time, there were thick forests, cottonwood, fir, etc. These forests have become thinner as development has grown. Developers buy land and then own the trees on the land they have purchased. In the years that I have lived on G Street, I have seen many large and beautiful and productive trees destroyed because the purchaser of the property believed that he owned the trees and had a right to do whatever he wished with them. Very few of us in Washougal actually planted the trees on our property. The huge magnolia on my lawn is well over 50 years old. I've owned the property only 10 years. Someone, many more than 10 years ago, planted that tree and all Washougal's trees, and I'm hoping that somehow, someone a long time from now will still be able to enjoy them. Now is the time for budgets and planning. In my concern for our trees, I'm hoping that you members of the City Council will hold these thoughts as you plan for our future and find a place in the city's budget for a city forester. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As part of that, as part of what Ms. Terrell has said, has there ever been any discussion about a city tree ordinance that would somehow regulate? I see Mr. Russin smiling there.
Short answer, yes.
Yes, there has. It was several years ago. I believe it was at the Planning Commission level. It didn't advance beyond.
I'm sorry?
It didn't advance beyond that. I'm trying to remember what Mitch has reported in the past.
Well, at some point, when we have a little more time, probably right now in budget cycles and all this stuff, it's probably not the right time to do it, but at some point, I think we ought to have a discussion about that among the council, maybe ask the Planning Commission to reconsider their position on that.
Anyone else that would like to address council? Mike. Good evening.
Mike Norris, 2241 G Street. I'd like to speak in favor of what Marilyn just said. You know, I too have trees around my flat, a 100-plus-year-old maple tree that I've been taking care of, and we just had a tree kitty corner from us taken out, a great big, nice evergreen, perfectly shaped evergreen taken out. But you know, I realize that people have a right to take care of their property as they see fit. But you know, a tree canopy for a city, you know, for a community is very important. It filters our air, provides shade, absorbs water. You know, it's a very important thing. And I don't know what I would just like to see the city council explore this further. I don't know what kind of enforcement could be done. Seems to me like code enforcement's kind of lacking as it is, but you know, when it comes to vegetation growing out on the sidewalks. But anyway, and you know, and I'd like to say that, you know, with this future rail traffic that's been proposed coming through our city, we're going to have a lot more diesel fumes that the trees could help absorb. I'd like to see us save what we have and maybe even you know, encourage people to plant more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else that would like to address council?
trees, cut, trim, whatever you need to. As far as you want to pass an ordinance for the public trees, the public property stuff, that's fine. But I don't think you need to intrude on people's personal property rights.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, moving to Mayor's Report, I have a number of items for you for your calendars if you don't already have them on there, and for the public. This Wednesday, there is a League of Women Voters Forum here in Washougal for the East County candidates. I believe it starts at 5:30 in the evening at the Community Center, right behind us. There will be restrooms available for that evening. The Chamber of Commerce this next Thursday has, as part of their luncheon meeting, the Proposition 1 issue. That meeting's at 11:30 at the Fairgate. If you want to attend that, certainly call the Chamber of Commerce. Not City Hall, Chamber of Commerce is doing that one. October 19th, we have a couple of animal events. One, we have the official retirement of our canine officer Dingo from 10 to 3 down at the off-leash park. Dingo will be there for that, and Chief, will his replacement be there as well? Okay. Also on the 19th, the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society has their auction and fundraiser over at the Furstenberg Center. And on the 23rd, council members, on the 23rd of October, there is also a regional AWC meeting over in Vancouver at the Heathman Hotel. If you wish to attend that and have not let Rose know that yet, certainly do that so she can make those arrangements. That's all that I've got. Council members. Brent?
Nothing.
Karen?
Serving Up Smiles is serving lunch at the elementary schools in Washougal. So if there's anybody from the police department or the fire department that wants to come serve lunch with me, that would be great.
Paul?
I wanted to underline something that Dave and Jennifer said for my council. It is crucial that we pass the interlocal agreement with the Association of Washington Cities Employee Benefits Trust. If we do not pass that by November 15th, we will not have that medical insurance available to us. And this year, as a result of going self-insured, we were able to hold the cost increases at zero across the board. Medical, dental, vision, employee assistance, health savings account management, all of them, no increases. So it's important. And then the other thing I would say to the staff members and families who are in the audience, if you haven't filled out your health questionnaire, please, 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 we need 50% in order to get the 2% savings as a well city. If we do not have that 50%, nothing else that we do as a well city matters in terms of getting that 2% savings. And that's a significant amount of money. So, and then I just wanted to underline what Jennifer said about the health fair. There's a health fair this Saturday at Jemtegard from 11 to 3. All kinds of fun things, from a obstacle course for the youngsters to food vendors for people that look like me. And one of the co-sponsors of that is Unite, the Washougal Community Coalition. And part of the reason to do this health fair is it is a kickoff event for Red Ribbon Week. I agree with you, hard to say. That's all, thank you.
Jennifer?
Nothing to add, thanks.
David?
Just one thing, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to get Melissa Smith to our next meeting to explore her rationale behind the vote that she made to move the Bus Rapid Transit project forward 4 weeks before a public vote on the subject?
We could certainly see what her schedule is.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe?
The fact that we just had her here 2 weeks ago and expressed our opinion. Want to invite you all to the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast and Mayor and Civic Leader Prayer Breakfast, I think is what it's called. It's an annual event that goes on, this year will be Friday, October 25th, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. at the Hilton in Vancouver. It's a great time for folks to get together and pray. And I know, Mayor, you've always been there since I've been there, and I hear you may not be able to attend this year?
I'm serving breakfast to the seniors that day.
Okay.
Final Fridays of the month.
Maybe Mayor Pro Tem.
He has a message awaiting him already.
Very good. Hopefully you can come and we can sit together. Be good. Thank you.
Okay, any other items? Okay, with that, we will take a brief time out to go into executive session in regard to litigation. I'm going to say we'll be 15 minutes or less, and undetermined if we've got any action to follow.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Does that include a bathroom break?
If you would like a bathroom break, we will be a few minutes beyond that, so totally up to yourselves.
Good idea.
Okay, why don't we try and be back here at 10 minutes till?